Hey, Nora Fay. I'm with MRD Lighting. We're a lighting design firm out of Long Island City, a global firm with offices also in the Netherlands. I got into lighting by accident, which is, I think, how a lot of people get into lighting. It's interesting what Sara was saying, how certain things can change the trajectory of your career. You start one way and then you go another way. She majored in philosophy, I majored in anthropology. I had graduate work in electron microscopy. I was on track to, just go get my PhD and teach at a university. And life takes changes, and so I ended up back in sort of like deciding, okay, now what am I going to do? So I had a few jobs, did well, and just nothing was really inspiring me. And I always loved architecture and design. And I remember talking to a recruiter, and I said, I love design. I really don't want to go back to school right now. Is there anything I can do? And she said, well, I know someone who sells architectural lighting and does very well. And I'm like, I didn't know that was a thing. So sure enough, the following week there was an ad in the New York Times for contract sales in architectural lighting. So I went on the interview. It was American Glass Light, very beautiful, very high-end decorative lighting company. And I remember interviewing and saying, I don't know anything about lighting, but I can tell you who all the major design firms are in the city. So I was always buying the magazines, and they said, well, we can teach you lighting. You have the passion. And that was the most important thing to them. And it turns out that that is the most important thing. That when you find when you focus in on what your passion is, then if you work in an industry that you love, the chances of your success, succeeding are going to be so much more than if you're just sort of going through the motions of a job or going for a job just for the money. Well, so it's been quite a road. I've had a number of different positions in the lighting industry. So I started out in sales locally. I ended up with a much larger firm and doing national sales with NeoRay lighting. So I was Nora Fay at NeoRay. So that was pretty easy to remember. I still get called that from time to time. So NeoRay was acquired by Cooper, and I spent quite a few years with Cooper Lighting and ended up with Cooper Industries. And from there, spent 4 years with one of the large construction firms in New York City. And that was actually wonderful because I learned a tremendous amount. I learned how a job was built. I was not just the lighting person. All of a sudden now you had to know everything about how a job was built. And for the first time, I didn't care whose lighting went into a space. It was like, as long as we get it on time. So that was kind of refreshing. But what Sara was saying also about balance in your life, with Lair, you had to be in at 7 in the morning, and while I was running to all my job sites all day long, I was still doing marketing, which was a lot of evenings. So that meant up at 4:30 in the morning, commuting from Connecticut and getting home at 10 o'clock at night. So after 4 years, I thought, if I keep doing this, I'm gonna die. So I thought, I know a lot about lighting. I was asked to help out on a couple of independent projects, and I had to quickly sort of throw a website together, and I actually had some wonderful experiences. I collaborated with another lighting designer who was sort of winding down her career, and we worked for a large engineering firm, and we audited 19 New York City public schools, and that was fascinating. And then I did a few design projects on my own, and as much as I think it's wonderful to design lighting, I realized that's really not what I want to do. I found working on my own to be very isolating. After many, many years of working with a team, I really wanted to be back with a team. And someone had mentioned Mike Riato, who owns MRD Lighting. I had never heard of him, which, after 33 years in lighting, I'm like, who is this guy? And then when I found out and saw his work, he had been working in a different area of the industry. He was really focused on cruise ships and hospitality, retail, whereas I was mostly corporate interiors. I was amazed at the work he did. He was incredibly talented. Also turned out to be a very, very nice guy. So we decided, let's work together, and I started with him 2 years ago. And my focus is mainly on corporate interiors, but again, it's not restricted to that. So the slide that you have up there is, it's a little bit fuzzy, but that was a lighting design project that I did on my own. And I'm proud of it because when I think of how I started with no background whatsoever to working with one of the big architectural firms, being brought in as the lighting designer by the project management company, and really having a space to have some fun with a tech company. And I did it on my own. I had a friend help me with the CAD drawings, but I did the fixture schedule and, soup to nuts, and they loved it. And so I was very proud of that. Well, there's always going to be challenges. I think one of the biggest challenges is really helping people understand the value of a lighting designer and good quality lighting in a space, because it seems to be always the first thing that gets value engineered out, which is just crazy, because they're spending all this money on hiring a design team, and then they want to cut what we all consider the most important part, which is this is how you're going to see the space. And one of the things that Sara, she's going to think I'm plagiarizing her, but I always say that lighting is a feeling. You walk in and you feel if that space is properly lit or not. You can tell. I mean, and you all know that the two biggest complaints are lighting and HVAC. So, and if you don't have either one of those right, you're going to get complaints. Now, again, you can't satisfy everyone. Somebody's going to say it's too bright. Somebody is going to say it's too dark. But overall, you are going to get a sense of is it the right lighting for the space. So that's the challenge, always the challenge. So I think of, after so many years of doing this, to walk in, the first time I walked into the Oculus in Lower Manhattan and being blown away. And it's not just the architecture, it's the lighting and the architecture. And I was just dumbfounded, because you'll never stop being inspired and just, floored at what lighting can do. And so that's really inspirational. Or every time you go to the top of one of the buildings in New York City and you look out and see the view, it's because of the lights. It's if you turn out all those lights, the view is, it's nothing. Or when you fly into Los Angeles and you look at this just expanse of lighting. So people are almost on a subconscious level are not even understanding what light is doing, just day to day. Well, it's not just women. I'll say for everyone. I'll go back to finding what you're passionate about. You're going to enjoy the industry tremendously if you work where you make incredible personal connections. My dear friends are here who I've known for all these years. We go to Thanksgiving together, or it's just wonderful to be in that kind of an industry. But on a practical standpoint, I would say if there's one thing, I would say find good mentors early on. And I was very, very fortunate. Sort of ignorance is bliss. I stumbled into some very good mentors at a very early stage in my career, and that helped me tremendously. And they were men. I mean, there weren't that many women at the time, and I had wonderful men mentors that helped me tremendously along the way, including Carroll's husband, Carroll with TPG, a firm I've worked with forever, who I'm very, very grateful to. I worked with Carroll's husband. He was my first boss at Cooper Lighting in Los Angeles, and Joe supported me tremendously over, my time with Cooper and, still dear friends, so. It's a great industry.
Okay, with that, thank you very much, Nora.
Well, thank you for having me.